Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where compassion meets commerce and leaders lead with love. Join your host, Tom Jackobs, as he delves into the insightful conversations with visionary business leaders who defy the status quo, putting humanity first and profit second. From heartfelt strategies to inspiring stories, this podcast is your compass in the world of conscious capitalism. So buckle up and let your heart guide your business journey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, business bosses and all those with hearts as big as their dreams, welcome back to the show. Today, we're diving deep into the world of holistic health and business with none other than the fabulous Dr. Daemon Jones. Dr. Day is not your average naturopathic doctor. Oh no, she's on a mission to revolutionize how women approach health and wellness, all while juggling the chaos of modern day business ownership. From balancing chakras to balancing checkbooks, Dr. Day does it all. She's like a superhero in a lab coat, armed with herbal remedies and a killer sense of humor. So grab your green smoothie, kick back, and let's welcome the doctor with a big heart, as big as her smile, Dr. Daemon Jones. Dr. Day, welcome.
Hey, Tom. Thank you for having me.
So good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time out and to share your experience of business ownership, especially with heart-led business ownership. And I always like to ask guests first off, what's your definition of a heart-led business?
So it's such a good question because I would say I got into naturopathic medicine because I was a patient before as a doctor. And I saw what the doctor was doing. I was working in corporate America. I drive like an hour plus every single day. I was 24. I was crying on my way to work. So I really didn't feel like I was in the right place. And then I met this woman, and everything she said helped me feel better. My digestive issues went away. My skin issues went away. My insecurities, I started to feel more confident because I felt better. I had more energy. And my thought processes about work went from, let me just find a job where I can make a lot of money, because I was working at one of the top consulting firms in the country, to something that made sense to me, that I felt called to do, that I felt like I could make a difference in the world. So I think heart-led businesses come from that place of someone having an experience and wanting to make it better for everyone else who's had that same experience. But you still have to run a business, which means you have to understand how to make sure that you're making a profit, whatever that is, so that you and all the people that work in your business can get paid appropriately so that they could live the way that they want to live. So I think the heart-centered business has the combination of both of those components working on its behalf.
So how is it that you are able to juggle both of those and still kind of manage your integrity? Because, we have a choice when we're doing a business. We can focus on the profits only,
Yeah.
and just, like big pharma or whatever, and not really care about the people as long as they're paying us, versus, the heart-led, where kind of your definition, you're putting that person first and then hoping, and hopefully by design, the profits will follow.
Yeah.
Where's that for you?
I think the first thing that is important for me, and I think it for so many people, is integrity. So I think people that have the heart-centered businesses come from a place and a space of wanting to make sure that other people, or people that engage in the business, get something out of the business. So I think for anyone, you have to figure out what's your why, right? Like Simon Sinek says sometimes, right? That you have to figure out what is the thing that's important to you about why you're running the business. And it can be heart-centered, it could be service-oriented, whatever that is. So for me, I think that people's health is deeply personal. And I think people have a combination of emotional components along with physical ailments that are coming into play. So when I decided that I was going to move into a business, I did not know how to run a business, right? I just was like, oh, I'm going to be able to work part time and I'm going to be able to like spend time with my family and I'm going to help people and that's going to be great. And so it was a rude awakening to see that if you don't have systems in place to allow you to move away from your business to have the other things that are important to you, then the business is running you. So I think it took me many years. I've been in practice over 20 years, and it took me many years to realize that in a heart-centered business, you can have that, but you have to have systems and you have to have the same thing that you do over and over again so that you and your team are not expending huge amounts of energy with each person that you are supporting or servicing, in whatever your service or product is. And it took me many years to figure out what that system is. So for all heart centered business, the faster you can figure out who are the people that are your people that understand your message, and then how do you create a process that can be individualized to each person, but the process, bringing in a new client, making sure that they're getting their labs, setting up their appointments when they graduate, if you do graduation ceremonies for them, like just each person gets that same thing so that your team isn't always running all over the place and that you as an entrepreneur are not running yourself into the ground. That's what I had to learn.
That is so insightful as well. And I'm sure it was a long learning curve that it's systems, especially for somebody that's very empathetic like yourself and just kind of very, was it right brained, creative, that having systems was probably not in your comfort zone. So how did you kind of get comfortable with that?
I was a computer consultant. And so there were like all these systems. And the reason why I didn't like it there is because there were so many like stiff systems. Like they were so stiff that they told us, okay, you have to buy clothes from these places and they have to be these colors, right? So that was back in the 90s. And that was too rigid for me. Like I couldn't deal with that. You're telling me exactly what to wear and, how to think. That was too much. But that background was fantastic, and it was laying the foundation so that once I met coaches, I wouldn't be where I am today without coaches and support systems and people like you, Tom, that like teach me as you're supporting me at the same time. So you definitely need those people. But once I got with coaches that are like, hey, systems can be good. I just fell back on my first job, which I was very good at. I just wasn't happy there. And then I was like, okay, let me figure out how to create systems and do what I do. So each patient gets my time and my attention, and that's very personalized. And the process that we do with them is always classes, always education. We always focus on labs if labs are needed to help understand what's going on, reevaluation, celebration, right? We do that in terms of the systems. And then the way that we treat each person is we look at specific parameters to make sure they're getting better. So it's still very individualized and I can support them and learn about them and be heart centered. We have these systems that actually move everyone through the process. And adult learners like processes. They want to know, what are we going to do and what's the next step? So also for anyone that has any product or service, if you let your person know how they're going through the process, they like that. Adult learners will thrive in that environment. So I didn't know all those things. And then I work with women and women love community. So I make sure that we also have community along with, these processes so that we can feel we're heard and we can share with others and all of that. So that combination really makes my experience really good to come to work, and it makes the patients that we work with, it makes them feel good, and it makes them not feel alone. So it took a long time, at least 15 years before I started getting these processes together and I started feeling like I had a legitimate business instead of just hoping each year that I ended up with enough money to get all my stuff done.
That totally makes sense. You had mentioned something a little bit earlier about that personal connection with the patient or with the client, and how can you, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but you're, because you're heart centered, you're putting a lot of energy into that relationship.
Yes.
So, and I sometimes that can maybe cloud the relationship a little bit. And for the heart centered practitioner, you're putting a lot of energy and you're not putting that back into you. So, how do you balance all that outbound energy to your patients, but also getting that energy back and rejuvenating yourself so that you can continue to do that?
In the beginning of the process, I didn't do that very well at all. And I was exhausted and tired all the time. And then it leads to burnout. And so I had to learn over time. It started with, okay, I was on vacation and I wanted to take 7 days, but I was like, oh my God, I can't take 7 days because if I'm not at work, I'm not making money. And so it would be like 3 days, like I was doing all these crazy things. And then the biggest thing, which I've already shared with you and I'd love to share with everyone else is, at the end of last year, I was really just exhausted and tired. 2023 was a challenging year professionally and personally. And one of my colleagues was like, you just need to take some time off. You've been doing this for 20 years. Do you want to keep doing it? Do you want to do something else? Like that's, what she said to me. And I was like, she said, you should take 3 months. And I was like, there is no way in the world that I can take 3 months off. Like none. I hadn't planned for it from a business perspective. I was like, what am I going to do with my patients? But I was like, I can take 3 weeks off. I could take 3 weeks off. And then when I started planning my trip, I ended up going to India. It ended up being 6 weeks was the amount that I was going to take off. And I was terrified to tell my patients. I was like, how am I going to do this? But I got courage and I was like, this is important to me. And so I went to each person that was working with me. And I only have a certain number of people I work with each month so I don't get overloaded. And they were excited for me. They were proud of me. They worked with me. They're like, sure. And so we set up a plan. So while I was away, they had activities that they were working on. I actually got some time off. It was the hugest relief to just tell them the truth that I needed a break. I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And they loved it. I loved it. It was an amazing trip. It was a trip of a lifetime. Like so many cool things happened. It was magical for me. But I think the biggest thing, and I'm glad I learned it now, I wish I had learned it earlier, is that you have to take time for yourself. You have to be willing to do that. And it's courageous and brave because you're not getting paid. If you're super smart and you set it up that way while you're away, everything is covered, right? That goes to the business processes and the systems that you can put in place. But it also let me know that in my practice that I have the type of people that are also full of heart because they were excited for me to be able to take a break. And they were glad that I did it. And they felt like I'm showing them something that they need to actually consider for themselves and their lives to really take a break as well. So that was a big lesson that I had to learn.
Yeah, for sure. And it's almost like you're leading them as well and showing them that, hey, I'm a practitioner, but I also do what I tell you to do as well. And so you're living your own truth. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's cool. So what other kind of surprises have come up over the last 20 years of being in practice and being heart led that either were a good surprise or a not so good surprise for you?
So I think, we've already talked about the thing that was the biggest challenge for me. And it wasn't unique to me, which is, you're heart centered and you want to do all these wonderful things, but you have to make sure the business run. Otherwise, it's not a business. So I think one of the biggest thing I've learned is surprise that I learned is the systems that at first I was really like, "Ugh," and the job that I was first in, learning those and understanding them and then implementing them made my life so much easier. And when I brought on other people into the practice, if you have systems, then they can understand what your systems are too. And so everybody can run on the same page. That was a hard lesson. It was an important lesson. And it was surprising that how important that those pieces are. Along the way, though, I've had so many beautiful experiences because I work with patients. I've had people, who have been in terrible distress, whether it was like mental, emotional distress, whether it was physical distress. They were terrified because maybe they were getting a disease that one of their family members died from, something like that. They realized that through looking at lifestyle, right? Nutrition, stress management, sleep, movement, like these kinds of things. And actually, more important than sleep, rest. Rest. So, looking at these lifestyle things and incorporating it into their lives, it makes their lives better. I am blown away every time, even though when I give the advice, I know it's going to help them. But when they take the advice and they bring it into their life, and then their life improves, and their voice improves, and their body improves, and their confidence improves, and their self esteem improves, that all those things happen by being clear about the goals you have for your life and how health is the vehicle to get you there. And that if you're willing to do it, and so many of my patients, I probably shouldn't even say this out loud, they don't even do what I tell them to do 100%. They just do it.
Nobody does.
Right. They just do it to the best of their ability and they feel better. Like that is the best surprise that I get every single time I talk to someone. And they're like, it's working. I'm better. That's the thing that
Even at
keeps me going.
50%.
Even at 50%. But don't tell my patients that because I want everyone to do 100%.
100%, of course.
That's
Oh, that's awesome. So some big takeaways that I took some notes here from what you were saying is systems, even though we're heart-centered, systems enable you to actually be that heart-centered, heart-led practitioner and create a business that allows you to do that because the systems are always running in the background and you don't have to like make things up as you go
right.
anymore. As long as you have that system and that customer journey is kind of set, and then you're able to customize it for the individual customer. I think that was probably one of the biggest takeaways from what you just said over this time.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can get a hold of you and if they're interested in working with you, how they can do that?
Okay. So Dr. Day, all my friends call me Day in college, right? So here's the story. So because they called me Day, I was trying to be creative and I came up with the name of the practice, Healthy Days, like having a healthy day. And so my name is spelled D-A-E instead of D-A-Y. So Healthy Days is with an E. So trying to be creative, maybe I went a little bit over the edge, but Healthy Days is the name of my practice. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. If you go onto LinkedIn, I write articles and talk about things related to what I do in my practice, like menopause and diabetes and women's health issues and heart disease. So these are the things that weight loss is huge, right? And sleep. So you can find articles that I write about that if you go to Dr. Daemon Jones, which is my whole name on LinkedIn, is how you can find me. And Healthy Days is the name of my website. So these are the ways that you can find and engage. And since the pandemic, I do everything 100% virtual. So you can also just give me a call or we can, work virtually or in classes. Again, women community classes. We have those as well. So that's how you can find out more about me.
Awesome. And we'll put all those links into the show notes as well.
Thanks.
So again, thank you so much, Dr. Day, for taking the time out of your busy day and sharing your insight in being a heart-led business entrepreneur. And to all the listeners and viewers out there, just a reminder, if you could go ahead and rate and review this podcast, it helps spread the word a little bit and get more heart-led business people help that they need and that advice. So go ahead and give that rating and review on your favorite podcast application, whether that be Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
You've been listening to the Heart-Led Business Show, hosted by Tom Jackobs. Join us next time for another inspiring journey into the heart of business.